This video is brought to you by patreon.com/worsttake. Get access to exclusive live streams and Discord servers, on-screen shoutouts, and early access to some videos when you join now. Help make sure that we can continue to make content like this by supporting the Patreon. Links are in the description down below. This upcoming 24-25 season for Deshaun Watson and for this core of the Cleveland Browns, I do believe to be do or die, right? You look at this roster, you look at the players, you look at the names, you look at the ages of those names, and you think to yourself, man, this looks like a team's best shot. And it's one hell of a shot, potentially. But this looks like a team's best shot. And I'm not the only one who thinks that. Here's the quarterback of the Cleveland Browns talking about that.
Your offense is looking real dynamic. We got Jeudy. We got Coop. We got Elijah Moore.
Yes,
you
sir.
You got Chubb and Njoku.
Yes, sir.
We got you behind center. Is this everything you need to win a Super Bowl?
We got the pieces. You feel me? I think we just got to put it all together. And, you know, once we all get healthy and we get that opportunity, or we all out there on the field at the same time for, you know, a full season, hell yeah, we got the chance to do it. I think we got the defense, we got the offense, we got the special teams, we got the culture, we got the fan base, like we got everything for it to do it. We just got to go do it now.
A defensive coordinator who balling. Offensive coordinator, new in the box. I think he's going to bring something new, some dynamic to y'all. Great head coach. But I think we need to clap it up for Andrew Berry. I think Andrew Berry deserves a hand for the things that he's been doing.
One thing is Browns fans that makes some of us uncomfortable that I've noticed over the last 5 years is expectations. Because when you stink, expectations sound like something you yearn for, right? It's this thing you hope for, right? It's kind of like being single, right? When you're single, you hope for the day that you have expectations and you have this thing that you care about. And then you get expectations. And it's not a fairy tale. It's better than where you were, but it's not a fairy tale. It's a real responsibility. It's real pressure. You get nervous over things you didn't used to get nervous about. You think about things that you didn't used to think about, and that pressure becomes real. And some of us don't like that pressure. They run away from it. Some of us face that pressure, accept it, and deal with the pressure that the expectations bring. My whole point here is that it's fun to think and dream about having expectations. But having expectations, not a dream. It's a very real, pressure-filled reality. That's what the Cleveland Browns are. Last year, they had so many injuries, 26% of the salary cap on IR, that the expectations that roster had went away. It didn't matter what the expectations were for that team. They had an excuse. A legitimate excuse. They lost everybody on the offense. They lost it all. They would, if the Browns would have finished 8-9 last year, if they would have finished 7-10, nobody would have thought anything different. Is what it is. That's kind of what happens when you have those injuries. But the Browns found a way to go 11-6, which was fun because they didn't really expect the Browns outside of like maybe there was a hope that they could be like the Broncos, right? We didn't expect them to win the Super Bowl or anything like that, but it was just fun to think about what they could do. The fun's over now. The expectations begin because now you're not the fun team that was super injured and won a bunch of games. Now you're the team that has 26% of its salary cap returning. And that without that 26%, they won 11 games last year with one of the toughest schedules in all of football. The expectations are high. Not just from the media, not just from fans. Honestly, if I were in that locker room as an athlete, the expectations would be high of myself. And I think those are the expectations that matter. When you expect a lot from yourself, you put a lot of pressure on yourself. And one thing that we have seen hurt Browns teams is when players have put pressure on themselves. I mean, Baker Mayfield's career in Cleveland, and honestly his career in general, is a prime example of this. I believe Baker Mayfield's biggest issue when he was with Cleveland, and you can see it now, is when he puts pressure on himself. He does not perform well, right? Comes in, really no expectations in 2018, plays well. Ton of expectations on him that he placed on himself probably when you bring in Odell Beckham and you talk about winning a Super Bowl. And he doesn't perform well. 2020, not that much expectations on him. He plays well. 2021, hey, the Browns won 11 games. They went to the playoffs. A lot of expectations on you. Don't play well. 2022, Browns trade you. Everybody's expecting you have this monster revenge season to get back at the Browns for trading for Deshaun Watson and kicking you out of town, and he stinks. It wasn't until he got to his his second team that year, the Los Angeles Rams, where he started playing decent football, and that's where some of the pressure was off of him. And then last year in Tampa Bay, not a lot of pressure on him, and maybe that's the perfect place for him to be because he cannot put that pressure on himself that he used to, that I really think really affected his game. This Browns team has had a similar thing, though, right? With that pressure word, with them putting that pressure on themselves. Because the same thing, it wasn't just Baker Mayfield that put pressure on himself in 2021. It was the whole team, and they didn't live up to that. So now this is an opportunity for them to finally live up to that pressure. Last year showed me that this is a team that has a chance to do that. More so than any other team we face, because this team did not fold in the face of adversity. And when I look for a team that can stand up to pressure, I want a team that's not going to fold. And they didn't fold last year. So that encourages me. You look at this roster, and on paper, they should be good. You expect that this offense should be enough for Deshaun Watson to be successful with. I'm not saying that he has to have a top 5 offense, but he should be the quarterback of a successful offense, right? Somewhere in the top half of the league, preferably closer to 10, right? If he's that level of offense, we're good. You expect this defense to be great in their second year in the Jim Schwartz defense, in the Jim Schwartz system, learning it, getting better at it, adding wrinkles to it. You expect them to be better. You expect pieces like David Njoku to get better. Why do I expect pieces like David Njoku to get better? Well, remember when David Njoku went off for that crazy 200-yard game or something? He had a 100-yard first quarter or something like that versus the Jets. But Amari Cooper was hurt, and Elijah Moore got hurt. And basically the Jets, all they did was put David Njoku in a blanket and limited his production for the rest of the night. You would hope with Jerry Jeudy that you have somebody else that if a team decides to do that, can be productive. This Browns team has a lot of expectations, a lot of great players. Now look, I'm not going to say that this team doesn't have question marks. Of course they have question marks. I think sometimes when you have an optimistic approach, people tend to exaggerate your optimism to kind of make their pessimism make more sense, right? And sometimes when I say something positive about somebody, people take it to mean that I said something ridiculous. What I am saying here is that this Browns team has all the tools to be successful, and I think that's a very sane and neutral thing to say. I'm not saying that this Browns roster is free of issues, but I'm also saying every team has a roster that has concerns, question marks, That's why you watch the games, right? If we knew absolutely what every roster was going to do, we wouldn't be watching the games every week. We would just read about it. But you watch the games to figure out what the answers are going to be to these questions that you have about the roster on any given week. The Browns have questions. Deshaun Watson, Nick Chubb, Jerry Jeudy, Jed Wells, all are going to be key parts of the offensive approach for this Cleveland Browns team. All have giant questions associated with their names. Like Jed Wells, not the most consistent body of work. Last year, there were points where it looked as good as 2020 for him. There were points to his play dropped as low as it's ever dropped, to the point to where we were seriously wondering if he can stay out there at left tackle. And now he's coming back off of injury. How will he perform? Will he be good enough at left tackle? Will that be a big hole for this team? Or does a new offensive line coach get to him in a way that others couldn't, and he becomes much closer to the player that you wanted out the draft than he's ever been, especially in the contract year? I can see both happening. Deshaun Watson. This is do or die for Deshaun Watson. For Deshaun Watson and Jerry Jeudy especially. The narratives around Deshaun Watson and Jerry Jeudy on the field nationally have been negative. Now, whether it's an overblown reason why it's negative or not, it doesn't matter. The narrative is the narrative. People are down on Jerry Jeudy nationally. People are down on Deshaun Watson nationally, to the point to where they think the Browns are worse for adding these two players who have had a past of being productive. Deshaun Watson more so than Jerry Jeudy. This year can completely flip that narrative, right? If Deshaun Watson and Jerry Jeudy ball out, then Andrew Berry is a genius for trading for both of them and extending both of them. And all of a sudden, the $230 million contract looks like a bargain. The 3 first-round picks you give up looks like a bargain because you use those 3 first-round picks to get a franchise quarterback and a top-tier wide receiver if they both ball out. The narrative on both of them changes dramatically. If they both have bad to average seasons, then the narrative is set in stone with both of those players. Jerry Jeudy will forever be what Steve Smith called him, just a guy. Deshaun Watson will always be a what happened to Deshaun Watson story, right? You know, he never was the same guy that he was before the allegations. That will be the story on Deshaun if he puts up an average to below average season. Same thing for Jerry Jeudy. If he puts up another 700-yard season, that's just going to be the narrative on Jerry Jeudy. The narrative on the Browns is that they overpaid for 2 players, that the Deshaun Watson trade led to a legacy of overplaying players who were ultimately average. The narrative can take a wild swing with both of those players this year based on what they do. And the reason it can take a wild swing is not just because they have an opportunity to play good football, but it's that they have an opportunity to play good football on the biggest stages, right? If Deshaun Watson has a great year, but his team wins 6 games, nationally, the narrative is not going to move. If Jerry Jeudy gets 1,200 yards, but he does it on a team that wins 4 games, nationally, the narrative is not going to move. But if Deshaun Watson throws for 4,000 yards and Jerry Jeudy gets 1,000 yards on a team that wins 11 or 12 games, all of a sudden narratives start to move. If you do it in a playoff game, you ball out in a playoff game, narratives start to move. Think about how quickly people changed up on C.J. Stroud in a positive direction, because he was doing good things in big games when everybody was watching for a team that had a good record. And the more success he had in those moments, the higher and higher the praise went. the more the narrative changed from a guy that people were calling an idiot because he didn't do well in a cognitive test pre-draft to somebody who ended the season in the MVP conversation. This is a giant opportunity for Deshaun Watson and Jerry Jeudy. And this is the 1 year they have to change the narrative on them. Big year for both of those guys. Nick Chubb. This is a big year for Nick Chubb too. Will he be somebody like Adrian Peterson who defied the odds and somehow came back off an ACL injury just as good, if not better, than he was before it? Or will he be another running back that got a debilitating injury later into their career that pretty much marked the end of their peak run? If you get somewhat close to a full Nick Chubb, if you get Deshaun Watson and Jerry Jeudy playing well, if you get Jed Wills playing well, if those four guys step up and play well, this team can win it all. They're certainly talented enough around those guys to win it all. But if Deshaun and Jerry Jeudy stink, if Jed stinks and Deshaun stinks, if Nick Chubb stinks and Jerry Jeudy stinks, then the picture gets a little bit more cloudy. There's some questions, for sure. There's some things that we need answered. And that's why I'm so excited about this season. Because there's a lot that we get to figure out through the football. Every game is going to matter. Every opportunity to see these guys play football is going to matter. Because we really have a lot to find out about one of the most talented rosters in the NFL. They could be a Super Bowl contender. They could be a super disappointment. I don't think the odds are 50-50. I think it leans more towards them being more of a contender based on what they did last year. Let me make that clear. But both are on the table for good reasons. But if there was a time to make a run, this is Cleveland's time to make a run. This is their chance. With this core of this roster, of this makeup of this team, this is the best shot that they're going to have. More than likely, it's 2025. So in the Deshaun Watson era, let's just leave it at that. This is probably his best chance to lead a championship level team. And honestly, in his career, this is his best chance to lead a championship level team. We'll see what he does. But you got to look around at this team and think to yourself, this is, if Deshaun Watson is who they said he was in 2019, 2020, and he's capable of reclaiming that mantle, this has to be the year he does it. Because if he doesn't, the narrative will always be what it's been the last couple of years on him. We'll see. It's going to be exciting to watch. Y'all have a great day. Have a better night. Peace.